previous. Okay, let's see more. Okay, so this is a session that we organized, as Emanuele said at the beginning, in collaboration within a framework of the UN Decade. And after having heard siders talking about we and the ocean we want, I feel embarrassed to show this, but this is the motto of the decade. And we still think we can do transformative ocean science solution for sustainable development, and this session should give some hint of how important it is to have community involvement and have high tech that help us to go over. So the decade is also coordinating many centers, and here Ocean Visions is one center, which is called Ocean Climate Solutions and Innovations, and that's very important. The one that we connect with is the Coastal Resilience Center of University of Bologna, but we have also others, a very important one for the transformative science, ocean prediction, ocean and climate nexus. And then we have regional coordination. So it's a kind of, you know, UN, very complicated structure, but it should offer the opportunity to get into an international framework for all the activities that we do. So the Decade Collaborative Center for Coastal Resilience has chosen to have some strategic objectives, and some of these strategic objectives are very much into the discussion of these days, and this particular session, especially enhancing stakeholder engagement and environmental justice, which we think are top priorities with us, together with education and the science information for all. So we have a time frame, 5 years, and we try to concentrate on these strategic objectives. We do, in fact, we have done stakeholder mapping, and our stakeholders are a bit different. I just wanted to flash this to you. Our stakeholders go to the IOC member states. We have decided, and they go to what we call the upstream stakeholders, that are the scientists and the services at the generic level, and then the downstream stakeholders. And it will be very nice to discuss even how to map these stakeholders. And last information before we start is that we have a 2024 UN Ocean Decade Conference, where many, hopefully, of us will be presenting the initial results, and I hope we will meet many of you at Barcelona. So I conclude here this introduction and leave the floor to my co-organizer of this session.
Thank you very much, Nadia.
Théophile. Yeah.
Thank you, Nadia. My name is Théophile Bongartz. I work for the Ocean and Climate Platform. I'm based in Paris. And I manage a project on coastal cities adaptation to sea level rise. And I'm very happy to be with you today to moderate this track on human adaptation to a changing ocean. Thank you very much to our speakers on stage, but also to our speakers who will join us online. And so they will all today, for this first panel, showcase some concrete case studies of community-driven projects. And actually, a few weeks ago, Nadia, my co-chair, and I were in Brussels at the European Parliament trying to get this message across, that adaptation has to be rooted in a concrete context, in a concrete local context. And that was a message really difficult to be understood. And it means that today adaptation policy requires to really go beyond the technical solution. And that's what we want to showcase today. And it means that social engineering come into play, and that we have to recognize that today we are not very competent in working with the population. We are not very competent in considering the population in the construction of knowledge. And that's what we want to discuss today during this track. So without further delay, I will give the floor to Karim Selouam. Karim, you are the founder and CEO of Resilience. And to launch this panel, we wanted you, because in a world where the data is really necessary to assess and to implement any adaptation process, you took advantage of the situation of data scarcity, so which is very, very interesting. So please, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, my name is Karim. Thank you very much for this introduction, Théophile. I could start here?
Yes, I think you can use...
Okay. Donc, rapidly, Resilience, what is it? This is engineering services from Vinci Group. Vinci, this is a big one of the construction industry. We propose consulting, modeling, project coordination, and earth observation also. And we build a lot of public-private partnership innovative program, notably with the Vinci department concerning the digitalization and data provider concerning the built environment, and also with international scientist community, notably with the CNES, the French Space Agency, the CEA, Commissariat à l'énergie atomique, and the Space Climate Observatory, UNEP, United, concerning the Earth Observatory. And together, we build a key partnership to develop a specific tools to manage, notably, the climate change adaptation strategy and the disaster risk. That's why the call of this presentation is called Global Upstream Knowledge Platform on Resilience and Managing Disaster for Small State Island and Coastal Cities. First of all, we are launched during the COP26 in Glasgow, an international initiative, a call for action dedicated to the 10 principles for effective action. And one of the objectives is how to build an international alliance to accelerate the implementation of data or to help to support all communities, national stakeholders, public and private stakeholders to build and to have an access to qualified data to manage and to modelize several scenarios of climate change and adaptation scenarios. For example, this is the question of the urgent action, notably how we could have a qualified data aligned with taxonomy, for example, aligned with the international regulation, with the climate finance, with the SDGs, but also how we could be easy to have a free access with the open data, for example. And now I want to show you an example of methodologies that we want to follow, notably established and based on the Global ABC strategy. The global ABC is Global Alliance for Building and Construction. First of all, this is the climate hazard identification, how we could estimate the issues concerning the infrastructure and the impact, the direct and indirect impact concerning the infrastructure, social communities, for example, after the impact, socio-economical impact, natural impact, environmental impacts, after the consequences, notably concerning the physical assets, and how we could estimate and categorize the risk categories, safeties, financial risk, continuity services, environmental, social impacts, and in the end, to track or to report mitigation and adaptation action, notably with the Earth observation tools. Here, the methodology, for example, is, first of all, to have an access of the qualified and the open data from the satellites, like, for example, the Eurocodex or Codex data from the European Space Agency, after to use and to map and to recreate a virtual landscape to describe rapidly, as soon as possible, and without expensive tools or expensive data, to recreate the landscape, the built environments, and all the community's location, for example. And in the end, the objective is to build a model to evaluate the cost impact, social impact, environmental impact through a lot of climate change scenarios to stress each infrastructure, each social economical plan with several climate change scenarios. Yep. No, this one, yes. And after this model, the objective also is how we could organize a database architecture to be very easy to also to plan or to preview, for example, the next implementation of this tool with the interoperability system. Very easy, without cost-expensive investments. The objective is how, for example, the final end user could have an access without to pay something, for example. And for this one, we try to looking for the local data, who have the data concerning the research center, the local communities, the local administration, plus all the data that could be provided by the satellites. We match the both after, and all this data could be organized through the geographical information system. It's very easy. After, when we match the social economical data, plus the spatial data, plus the local data, after we could build a predictive model, notably through several scenarios of climate change, notably concerning the RCP 8.5, for example, RCP 4.5, etc., etc. And one of the objectives is also to estimate the physical damage, the loss and damage, and how we could estimate the cost for the next future investments, notably to support the adaptation action or adaptation investments. And to show now two use cases, one concerning the West African Coastal Area Management Program in Waka. Waka, this is the Western Africa coast. This is environmental protected area, notably on the mangrove. This is a video, rapidly.
It's an initiative partnership that brings together researchers from French and Senegalese universities, as well as the Resilience Design Office. The University of Rouen-Normandie and the University Amadou Mahtar Mbao of Dakar are co-carrying this project. Coastal environments are areas where various hydrometeomarine hazards meet and interact, which make them particularly vulnerable. Yet, these areas are highly populated with concentrated socio-economic activities. However, with climate change, these sensitive areas are likely to be exposed due to sea level rise, but also to the increase in extreme precipitations and storm events causing flooding and coastal erosion. Therefore, coastal infrastructures and urban areas are facing unprecedented socio-environmental challenges, hampering their development and the sustainability of activities and housing. That is in this context that the OSS Saint-Louis project takes place. By improving the knowledge of coastal hazards and risks in connection with climate change, it aims to offer territory and infrastructure management tools and indicators, and to use them to raise awareness among stakeholders. The selected study area is that of Saint-Louis Coast in Senegal, Barbary Strip, a populated city with a strong historical heritage and a high concentration of socio-economic activities. This area is especially at risk due to the flooding frequency and intensity and coastal erosion in relation to climate change. How? The project's initial approach is based on the characterization of hydrometeomarine conditions that have caused major flooding generating damage in order to understand the multifactorial causes of the Saint-Louis coastal flooding. Cartographic simulations implementation will enable to highlight current and future hotspots at risk linked to climate change. The approach then consists of building tools and indicators based on the modeling of areas prone to flooding and erosion caused by extreme wave storms. The results obtained will include the mapping of current and future scenarios specifying areas of vulnerability with particular attention to population, activities and infrastructures. Finally, the project stakeholders wish to raise awareness among the actors, such as decision makers, managers, local actors, associations, etc., towards a multi-risks vision to answer the various stakes of coastal areas and co-build the coast and cities of tomorrow. The approach is based on coupling and analyzing data from various sources. In situ data using GPS and video cameras to obtain topobathymetric data, modeled data for wave and tide information, satellite data to get sea level rise, digital elevation models, coastal slope, coastline evolution, etc., and socio-economic data obtained from population surveys. These observations, measurements and simulations will be carried out for 3 study areas in the Saint-Louis coastal zone: the New Mouth, the coastal spit and the lower estuary. As the Saint-Louis coastal area is considered representative of hazards and risks in West Africa, the approach and the development offered by the project could be transposed to other coasts of this region.
This project should be replicated in all the western coasts in Africa. One of the objectives is to build international tools to manage the global area from the southern Morocco until the Gulf of Guinea. And now the next and the last example is a project financed by International Financial Corporation for the World Bank, dedicated to the small state island. Here, the objective is based on the same methodologies that we have done in Saint-Louis du Senegal, implemented in the virtual and digitalization of the island. All this digitalization will be, as soon as possible, we have digitalized in 3 months, very soon, because we are use a lot of satellite data. It's not expensive methodology, not expensive because it's a very short time. And one of the objectives is rapidly to support all the administration of the local administration to estimate the loss and damage in this island, notably to manage with all the stakeholders, local communities, the research center, all the administration, plus the international investor who want to invest in Dominica Island to support and to rebuild back better all the past infrastructure which was damaged by the previous hurricane and climate hazard. And these tools in this model will be replicated in Barbade Island and in the 7 islands in Pacific also. And just for your information, with these tools, we are test a new type of financial mechanism to modelize the loss and damage. And with this methodology, we estimated the damage without action around 30% of the annual GDP in Dominica Island. What is very important, now we have some very tangible indicator, tangible KPI with tangible cost estimation to help and to support all the international investors to come here to invest, to build back better in Dominica Island. And to conclude rapidly, today we have more than 19 projects all around the world, split in more than 80 countries. And concerning the ocean and coastal critical infrastructure, notably with UNEP and International Financial Corporation from the World Bank, we are more than 20 projects in the coast island and the small state island. Thank you.
So let's see if I can make it. Yes. The next speaker is Professor Christy Tiampo. She will join us from outside. Yes, Christy, hi.
Hi, I will share my screen.
Yes.
Let's make sure to see that works.
Good. She's
There
professor
we
in
go.
the Department of Geological Sciences of the University of Colorado and Director of Earth Science and Observation Center. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. The work I'm going to show you is aimed at better characterizing the local and regional subsidence in large coastal cities using new remote sensing techniques developed in many parts of the world, but here in particular with the assistance of the group, the collaboration of the group you see on the bottom of this screen. And we are very grateful for the support of the NASA Sea Level Change team who funded this research. We really use 2 different kinds of advanced remote sensing techniques here, and we put them together. The first is high resolution processing of radar data, what we call differential interferometric synthetic aperture radar. That long mouthful doesn't mean anything here in particular, except that what it can do is provide maps of surface height change over time or vertical land motion in these large coastal cities. We put those together with DEMs, digital elevation models, at 2 to 10 meter, so very high resolution in order to both improve that INSAR measurement and that vertical land motion measurement, but also in order to be able to capture what it might do in some of these regions. And I'm going to show you some examples of that, starting with vertical land motion in Vancouver, British Columbia. And I want to show you how we've advanced this technique over the last 10 to 20 years. On the left is a map that we produced in 2013 of subsidence in Vancouver, British Columbia, between over 12 years, but between almost 20 years, between 1995 and 2013. This is at 30-meter pixel spacing. The green and the blue show you local subsidence per year. It's a rate. The important thing to note in this map is, though it was quite innovative and advanced at the time, there are large gaps in coverage here. There are places where we just don't know what's going on, all those clear to white areas. On the right, I'm showing you a map we produced last year, which is subsidence in the same city from 2017 to 2021, so a 4-year time period. And you'll notice that really partly because of the advances in radar collection, but also because of the high resolution digital elevation models we use to process this, we can now recover information for every pixel, every location in Vancouver, and there are no more gaps in that data. Some of the subsidence here is as high as 6 millimeters per year in some places, and we're doing this now at 7-meter pixel spacing, so at very high resolutions. What do these high resolution DEMs also provide us? Well, I'm going to give you some examples. This is a 30-meter DEM, the kind that produced largely by SRTM, the Shuttle Radar Topography Mission, has been available for 20, 30 years now, depending on what part of the world you were in. Freely available and useful, incredibly useful over the last few years. But the 2-meter DEM that we produced looks like this: much higher resolution, much more detail on what's going on in the city of Lagos, Nigeria. If we actually zoom in to this box here, again, there's that 30-meter resolution DEM. This is a 2-meter resolution DEM. Now, not only does that help to produce a better estimate of vertical land motion in this large coastal city, but it also allows us to do a better job estimating changes, ongoing change, and hazard in the area. And of course, the most obvious case for that is flooding. This is that vertical land motion map. Now it's in Lagos again. We produced it ourselves between 4 and -4, largely -4 millimeters per year of centimeters per year of subsidence in this region. If we superimpose that on a DEM and make an inundation map, we now have an inundation map in that part of Lagos. And again, using that 2-meter DEM, we can start to look at very high resolution areas for where that inundation is going to be a problem with time. This is today, areas that flood routinely during storms in this bit to the south of Lagos. Areas that are in light blue are areas that are below sea level. Areas in dark blue are also below sea level, but are actually connected to the ocean, so they're not protected by seawalls, et cetera. And you can see the kind of inundation that is going on now. If we add the vertical land motion, the subsidence that's going on in this area, to sea level rise, we can project what that inundation will look like in 2050. And it now looks like this, much more extensive. By the time 2100 arrives, there are entire areas which are largely underwater and unusable now, entire neighborhoods that are effectively under perpetual hazard. So we've taken this as a case study, and we are talking to the city of Mumbai, India. The Mumbai Metropolitan Regional Development Authority is working on a regional climate action plan, and with our colleagues from Notre Dame and other sea level team partners, sea level change team partners, we're looking at helping them to figure out where Mumbai is going to go in the future, and potentially work on mitigation remediation measures. Here's an example of that. Mumbai is again shown here on the left, this sort of regional area of Mumbai. This is again a vertical land motion map in millimeters per year of motion. We're looking at, in some places, almost 2 to 3 centimeters per year of subsidence in the city, again, from natural and anthropogenic changes. On the right, we have blow up of the southern part of Mumbai, which largely the downtown of Mumbai, we've superimposed on that the original volcanic islands that this city was created around. It was filled in around those islands. They've remained relatively stable with time, but the areas around it are sinking. If we look at what the future is going to look like here in Mumbai, we can look at sub-neighborhoods, small regions, to again better understand the inundation with time and how that's going to change again as this vertical land, as this subsidence, the vertical land motion continues, and as sea level rises with time. And so this is a map of 2030. And again, we have that light blue and dark blue color scheme. The light blue are areas that are perpetually below sea level. Dark blue is also below sea level, but also connected to the sea, so it will flood more. As time goes by, we can map that inundation in 2050, and then we can map that inundation in 2100. And the goal here is to help the city figure out what parts of the city can this problem be mitigated, what parts should land use change be modified, so the land use itself be modified or changed to make it to produce less impact from this rise. And I think that's my time. It is. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christy. Thank you for those examples from all around the world. So now let's cross the seven seas and go back to Europe and the Mediterranean. With you, Salem. So you are an environmental engineer, but you're also coordinating a project working with 10 cities around the Mediterranean and Europe on coastal adaptation to sea level rise and co-construction of common vision and project for the future. So let's tell us more. Thank you.
I think I cannot. Yeah.
Which one?
Yes.
That one?
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Thank you so much for the introduction. And hello, everyone. Delighted to be here today. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to just give you an overview of the SCORE project. So what we're trying to develop over there and how we work with the communities to increase the climate resilience and what kind of integrated solution that we're trying to develop. This integrated solution will be replicatable, scalable in order to increase climate resilience and in European coastal cities. SCORE stands for Smart Control of Climate Resilience in European Coastal Cities. And what we try to do here is, as I said, to develop an integrated solution, a framework that can be used and adopted to increase the climate resilience in coastal cities. SCORE, it's a Horizon 2020 project funded by European Commission. We are 28 partners across Europe, and we are working, as Theo mentioned, across 10 cities, 10 case studies, which later I will be calling them coastal cities living labs, and that's what we call them, as we deal with the project, right? So the SCORE we are developing and validating an integrated framework that consists of three main pillars. So the first one is the use of ecosystem-based adaptations against extreme climate events and sea level rise. The second thing is the smart technologies and how we can use the smart technologies to act on climate change. And then the third one, which is the gear that moves those two main components, it's the living lab approach. So, and that's why we call our case studies coastal cities living labs, because we do everything using the iterative process of a living lab. As you can see, we are working on 10 cities, covering all the main sea bodies across Europe except the North Sea, because there is another project working on that one. And as I mentioned there, our integrated approach, the framework that we're developing and testing and validating across those 10 case studies is consisting of three main components. The first one is co-designed, co-created ecosystem-based adaptation for each of those case studies. So what we did is basically we went and established a coastal city living lab in each of those coastal cities, and we co-defined the problems, the challenges that causing, problems for the communities. Some of them like coastal erosion, some of them will be like coastal flooding, and so on and so forth. And we kind of co-designed ecosystem-based adaptation to be implemented with the community in the city in particular locations. Now, the second part is the smart technologies. As part of the project, we're developing a number of smart technologies. All of them are depending on how we can communicate and involve the citizens and the different stakeholders in the process of monitoring, co-monitoring the nature-based solutions and the local environment. So the first part, the first technology we're developing is the digital twin solution. The second thing is a network of low-cost sensing technologies that can be used by the citizens and the different stakeholders to monitor the local environment. We're also developing early warning citizen science-based early warning support system that can help the governmental bodies that responsible of issuing the warnings to use the citizen science and maximize on the data that we get from the citizens. And we also develop a data management platform that can be used to manage all the data coming from the high-end sensing technologies, the low-cost sensing technologies, the citizen science activities, the models, and so on and so forth. So we have that platform to integrate all those processes, and all those tools are are run through the Living Lab approach. So it's a virtual framework that allows the citizens, stakeholders, governmental bodies, municipalities, engineers to work together on co-design, co-define, co-create, and co-monitor the nature-based solutions to be implemented against extreme climate events. So as I mentioned, like within SCORE, we're working on main areas. The first one is kind of like the early warning support system that is based on citizen science. So as part of this, we created a number of citizen science low-cost sensing technologies catalogs. Those catalogs, basically co-designed catalogs that you show what kind of low-cost sensing technologies that can be used by the citizens to actually monitor the local environmental parameters. And we created a platform that connected those sensors to the digital twin. So we have direct feed from the citizens directly to the integrated environmental model that runs within the digital twin solution. And that helps us like run what-if scenarios based on the community feedback. What we also do is the ICT platform for the data management. What we discovered is data management as part of acting on climate change is massive. It's a massive task when you try to actually look at data coming from communities and data to be processed based on what-if scenarios. So that platform is now like being developed. We're testing it, and it helps connectivity between the sensors and the digital twin platform. We're also developing financial instruments as part of the project. So how we can capitalize on the nature-based solutions through nature-based solutions enterprises and the social innovation. And also, obviously, the digital twin platform, one of the main outputs of the project, and also the concept of Coastal City Living Lab, how you establish a Coastal City Living Lab, how you map the stakeholders, how you engage the stakeholders, how you get the feedback, how you run the iterative process of co-define, co-design, co-create, co-monitor all the time in order to get continuous feedback from the citizens to the digital platform. I'm not getting into the details of each Coastal City Living Lab challenges and the impacts on what we're trying to do in every single one. But what I can direct you is to our website, and there you will find all our reports. We have 81 reports to be published. We have published probably half of them now. So there are a lot of information and results like published. All what we do is open source. So all the platforms will be available after being tested and validated. And what we're trying to do here, as you can see, we're trying to have a network of cities that can, and communities that can learn from each other. This network will be expandable and replicatable. So at the end of the project, we will develop what we call a cookbook, how you can build a coastal city living lab, how you can put the communities to work together, and how you can use the different technologies and how we can develop them in the future. One of the main things to actually improve, to facilitate that network of cities to work together is the role of front runners and follower within our communities, within a school. So as you can see, we have 10 cities, like we have Alicante, Villanova, Dublin, Gdansk, Piran, Massa, Irish, Samson, and Sligo. And what we do there, each city, together with the local community, we've kind of like did a really massive task on establishing the baseline, how experience the city in every single task of the project in order to achieve the resilience. And what we discovered is some of the cities are advanced in particular part of it. So for example, if you look at Dublin, they have a lot of initiatives using citizen science. So you already have a citizen science community that can help you and that can kind of like jumpstart if you want to facilitate the process. But maybe in the socioeconomic aspects, Dublin wasn't like so developed as Barcelona, for example, right? So what we did is we did a really massive task in order to understand our coastal city living labs, and we established each of them based on the tasks to a front runner and a follower. And through the digital twin that we have, they actually learn from each other how to not repeat the same mistake first, and how we can increase climate resilience together and share the solutions. And that network will be kind of like expandable and replicatable, because everything we develop is actually going to be open source. And what helps like to actually make this kind of like replicatable and scalable is the living lab approach. So as you can see, we start with the problem space, solution space, and kind of like deployment space, and all of them kind of like feeding back into each other, and it's an iterative process. So you keep running that every single time for every single task, which takes probably a little bit longer than taking a decision by the municipality. But what ensures is the public acceptance of the solution. So that's why we're adopting this as part of the project. And that's probably my time, so I will stop on this. But I would say is follow us like on all the social media platforms, and we have also our publications and the details about the technicalities and the digital twin and the data that we use on our website. And I'll be more than happy to talk to any of you at any stage. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And now is the time of Dr. Kate Morano, research scientist at the Georgia Institute of Technology, Resilience Planning Director at the Georgia Coastal Equity and Resilience Hub. So let's see if this time I can make it, maybe.
Thank you for conferring a doctorate.
You will.
Thank you. I just thank Nadia for conferring a doctorate degree, which I did not have before right now, but I appreciate that. Hi, everyone. I am Kate Morano. I work as the Resilience Planning Director for the Coastal Equity and Resilience Hub. We call it the SEER Hub, which is a project on all of coastal Georgia that I'm really, really excited to be a part of. We are working to help communities, and in particular vulnerable, marginalized communities across the coast of Georgia, reduce the impacts of climate change and extreme weather events. And what I really love about this project is that it partners academics and researchers and scientists with practitioners from local government and community partners. And we are all working together on these. We also have 3 pillars to our project. This is a project that started back in 2018 as the Smart Sea Level Sensors Project, which many of you may be familiar with. We installed a high-density network of water level sensors across Chatham County, Georgia, which is the northernmost county on the coast of Georgia. It is where the city of Savannah is located. And that was done to address gaps in coastal observations. And since then, since 2018, we have continued to build relationships with local government partners and environmental justice partners. And recently, last fall, we were given an award from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, to sort of expand this project down the coast of Georgia. And so our three pillars of this project, I mentioned the environmental sensor network. My colleague Russ Clark will be talking about that in the next sessions. Part of that is developing decision support tools to visualize this data and work closely with practitioners, emergency managers in particular, to develop a portal that will help them in their day-to-day emergency preparation and response. The second pillar is community engagement, which I'll talk a little more about later. And then K-12 education and workforce development is the third pillar of this project. We have partnered with local high schools, middle schools to develop curriculum and run summer camps. Russ will be talking about all of that as well. In that picture, you can see a high school student from a local school in Savannah actually building one of the sensors. And it's a really exciting project. The community has been incredibly engaged and continued to build those relationships, right? Projects like this, I think, move at the speed of relationships. And so we are very lucky to have continual engagement and been able to continue working with those community partners. You can see on the bottom of this slide a bunch of logos of the organizations that are core partners in this project: Georgia Tech, the City of Savannah, Chatham County Emergency Managers, Harambe House Citizens for Environmental Justice, as well as the Pinpoint Betterment Association, Brown University now with Manu DiLorenzo and Dr. Kim Cobb, University of Georgia Marine Extension and Georgia Sea Grant, as well as Savannah State University, among many, many other organizations. And so it takes a village, right? It really is a collaborative project that is really, really exciting and really, I think, making a difference in the community, I hope. So I wanted to include this slide. This is a quote from the Framework for Community-Driven Climate Resilience Planning. I think this encapsulates how we approach this kind of work within SEER-Hub. Everyone holds a critical piece of the puzzle, and we really make an effort to ensure that community members are on equal footing and working alongside government practitioners and scientists and researchers to co-design solutions that work for their communities. Like I said, community engagement is a critical piece of making this project successful and sustainable long-term. We work closely with key partners of ours at Harambe House Citizens for Environmental Justice, which serves near port communities in the city of Savannah. Hudson Hill in the picture in the top right is one of those communities that they are embedded in. We also work with the Pinpoint Betterment Association, which is a Gullah Geechee community in Chatham County, which was founded by freed slaves in the 1890s and is part of the Gullah Geechee Heritage Corridor that goes from Jacksonville, North Carolina, down the coast to Jacksonville, Florida, and has really rich culture and traditions and deep ties to the neighborhood, the land that they live on. And so, you know, it's so critical that we as researchers listen to what those communities have to say. They have been living on this land in these neighborhoods for generations, and they know better than anyone else what is going on with the environment. So we really try hard to not tell them what our project is about, what we see as the goals for their community. We really try hard to meet people where they are, to pay them for their time, and to listen to what they have to say, what their goals are for their community. And we can take that information and sort of mull it over, figure out how we can help them accomplish the climate resilience related goals that they have for their communities. I should also mention the picture on the bottom right there is from a community engagement tool called the Map Spot, which was developed by data artist Jer Thorpe and a professor at Georgia Tech named Yanni Lukisis. And this is a tool that we have used with both residents of Hudson Hill as well as middle school students in terms of curriculum development to understand data as lived experience, specifically around flooding. And it's a really neat tool. It gets everybody around a table having these conversations about flooding and environmental justice and equity. And at the end of this session, you have this tangible map, this tangible tool to use that community members can then take to local decision makers and advocate for their communities. So I wanted to, Nadia, you had requested a video of Russ on our phone call last week, so I wanted to include that. This video was made a couple years ago, back when the project was the Smart Sea Level Sensors project. Just to set up this clip real quick, it starts with Dawood Shabaka, who is the interim director of Harambe House, Citizens for Environmental Justice, talking about how he and his community typically perceive researchers or research projects kind of parachuting in, doing their work, and then leaving without really true engagement with these communities, and how our project is a little bit different. Russ, you make a cameo appearance in this as well, so.
My friends and my brothers and I, we used to laugh at studies that were put out on almost anything, because we would always look at each other and say, well, you know, they've been doing this study for the last year and they're talking about the results. Did you get a call? No, I didn't get a call. Did you get a call? No, I didn't get a call. Because they never called the black community. You know, what actually happens is the scientists will come in and do a study and then go back and write their report. They get tenure, and that community never sees that scientist or that professor again.
The impacts of storm events, those kinds of things are deeply personal to me, and the piece that is we really drive home with this project, this is a permanent installation for use by the local community.
Well, the city of Savannah, thankfully, suggested they contact Harambe House. One of the reasons why we like their program is that they want to interface with the community and the community residents on, you know, what they're doing, how they're doing it, and hey, maybe you might want to be involved, you know.
So the community response has been phenomenal. It truly is what keeps us going.
We jumped at the idea because now it looks like there are some results that's tangible for these communities, and that they're feeling like, okay, maybe I am being heard. And all right, this data that we're now collecting on the sea level rise, you know, we're beginning to see a pattern that we want to break.
So.
Growing up, my friends and my brothers and I.
That's all I have, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate, for your presentation. Thank you also for underlining the importance of moving at the time of building concrete relationships, the time of trust. It's very important. And it's a good transition with the next video, because sometimes we don't have this time. And that's the case of the next video, and someone from Senegal, from the city of Saint-Louis, that you briefly presented also, will presented a project that consists in manage the retreat of the population and all the districts of fishermen in the city of Saint-Louis. So there is not so many examples of managed retreat that have been implemented, and you will see that it's very difficult. It has been conducted in an emergency, and you will see Alassane Loum couldn't be with us today, so he will just record the video presenting all the projects. I don't really know how to do. Okay. Here?
Yeah,
No.
no. No, starting. Yeah.
No.
No, not even that. Ay, ay, ay. Maybe if you click here. Thank you.
Where you trying to this one?
Yeah.
It's the video,
It's a
right?
movie.
Yeah. Sorry.
You got a video coming up?
Everything works.
La ville de Saint-Louis est un archipel composé de 3 entités qu'on appelle le faubourg de Sort, l'île de Saint-Louis et la langue de Barbarie. Donc le faubourg de Sort, c'est le continent. L'île de Saint-Louis, c'est la partie qui est classée patrimoine mondial de l'UNESCO. Et la langue de Barbarie, c'est ce cordon dunaire-là qui longe l'océan Atlantique. Et entre la langue de Barbarie et l'île, il y a le bras du fleuve, donc c'est une estuaire, il y a le fleuve Sénégal qui traverse. Donc les 3 entités sont séparées chacune par un cours d'eau. Soit pose la problématique de la présence continue de l'eau à Saint-Louis. Ajoutez à cela maintenant sa position frontale avec la mer, la langue de Barbarie, qui constitue la zone en fait de réflexion actuelle sur l'ensemble des projets et programmes qui sont destinés à faire en sorte que la ville soit résiliente et que la ville également puisse faire face aux effets du changement climatique. Au moment de la mise en œuvre du projet de gestion des eaux pluviales, qui est le projet, on a assisté à des raz-de-marée au niveau de la langue de Barbarie, qui a conduit en fait à une destruction de maisons, d'activités, le déplacement de population. Donc du coup, on a initié ce projet de relèvement d'urgence et de résilience de Saint-Louis, qui s'appelle le SAP en anglais, le projet de relèvement d'urgence de Saint-Louis. Et ce projet maintenant, son rôle, c'était quoi? C'était de répondre à une situation urgente. Le projet s'était planifié sur plusieurs étapes, mais le SARP vient pour régler le problème des impactés de la langue de Barbarie. Donc, toutes les maisons qui se situent sur une bande de 20 mètres le long de la côte, qui seront impactées, donc toute la réflexion va être portée sur ce projet, avec la commune, avec l'État du Sénégal, avec l'ADM, comment maintenant initier un projet de relogement pour que ces populations déjà qui sont dans cette précarité puissent trouver un logement, mais que les autres également qui se trouvent dans la bande qui est identifiée, la bande de 20 mètres, puissent les rejoindre après. Donc à 500 logements qui seront construits, et comme cette population impactée, normalement c'est vers les 13 à 15 000 personnes impactées par le projet. L'idée, c'est de les en fait déloger de la langue de Barbarie et de les amener dans un autre site à partir d'une approche d'analyse multicritère, de voir quel était le site le mieux indiqué pour que ces populations, une fois délocalisées, ne subissent pas les mêmes conditions qu'elles subissaient en fait en amont. Donc du coup, l'analyse a montré qu'en fait le site de Djougop, qui est à côté de l'université Gaston Berger, paraissait le site le mieux indiqué, mais que quand même il y avait des efforts à faire en termes d'aménagement, en termes également de sécurisation et en termes également de mise en place de services sociaux de base, de réseaux, d'infrastructures et autres. Donc c'est en cela que maintenant le projet de relocalisation a été orienté vers ça. Maintenant, il y a quand même un processus, parce que quand on déplace des populations, on ne déplace pas en fait des objets, quoi. C'est des êtres vivants. qui ont une certaine croyance. Donc, il fallait voir dans quelle mesure les accompagner dans ce déplacement pour qu'ils puissent retrouver, en fait, soi-disant, le même milieu dans lequel ils étaient. Même si on ne peut pas reproduire exactement le milieu d'origine, qu'on ait quand même les bases qui feront que ces personnes qui vont être délocalisées puissent garder quand même un certain équilibre du point de vue socio-culturel, du point de vue économique, mais également du point de vue de l'activité de pêche qui constitue pratiquement la principale source de revenus de ces gens-là. Parce que les gens, c'est des pêcheurs, ils vivaient en bordure de mer, donc ils étaient près de leur activité. Quand on les déplace à 8 km, 7 km, 10 km, donc il pourrait y avoir quand même un impact sur le travail. Donc du coup, les études ont montré quand même qu'il y en a qui acceptent toujours de continuer l'activité de pêche, mais à condition que les moyens de transport puissent être développés dans cet axe-là. Donc, on a parlé d'aspect scientifique, on a parlé d'aspect social, mais il y avait l'espace qui posait problème. Parce que Saint-Louis, comme je vous disais, dans l'introduction, c'est une petite ville de 46 km². Pour trouver un espace de 2 hectares libre à Saint-Louis, c'est tout un problème. Donc, quand on a lancé le projet de logement, le maire a voulu véritablement que ces populations restent sur le territoire de la commune. Mais ce n'était pas possible parce qu'on n'avait pas assez d'emprise pour pouvoir les reloger. Donc, les seules terres qui étaient disponibles, c'était des terres qui appartenaient aux communes voisines, donc la commune de Gandon. Comme vous savez, en Afrique, quand une ville va voir son voisin pour dire « Ah, j'ai un problème de foncier », automatiquement, il y a des réactions parce que les communes également sont d'égale dignité et d'égale souveraineté. Donc, il fallait quand même trouver un astuce. Le projet a quand même permis de faire comprendre à ces collectivités qu'à partir du projet-là, ce projet est un exemple pour montrer que chaque commune a besoin de l'autre. Aujourd'hui, Saint-Louis a besoin d'espace, c'est Gandon qui va lui donner l'espace. Demain, Gandon aura besoin d'autre chose que Saint-Louis va lui donner. Les grands financements, c'est la Banque mondiale. Puis il y a le FND également, Fonds de développement, qui sont les principaux pourvoyeurs. Maintenant, ce qu'il faut comprendre aussi, c'est que le financement n'est pas venu avec 6 000 euros. Donc, le maire de la ville de Saint-Louis est allé à la tribune des Nations Unies. Il a fait une communication sur la vulnérabilité de Saint-Louis et ça a suscité quand même un intérêt pour la banque. Donc, c'est en ce moment-là qu'ils avaient décidé quand même d'appuyer l'État du Sénégal. Ça ne doit pas être des projets d'urgence. Un projet de relogement, pourquoi on a eu des difficultés? Parce que ça a été une réponse urgente. Donc, dans la précipitation, il fallait trouver une solution très rapidement. On doit l'intégrer dans la planification des villes. Si on sait que, par exemple, cette ville-là a un statut, comme on dit, exposé au phénomène des changements climatiques, il faut que dans les documents de planification, que cette dimension soit intégrée. Et qu'on aille même jusqu'à avoir des plans de relogement qui sont programmés à l'avance, avant même qu'il y ait une catastrophe. Saint-Louis n'avait pas ça. Donc, on était dans l'urgence, on a agi. Si, par exemple, à Saint-Louis, on avait pensé qu'un jour ou l'autre, celle-là serait détruite et qu'on aurait besoin de 24 hectares pour pouvoir loger ces populations, on n'allait pas tout urbaniser, tout lotisser et mettre des maisons partout. Il y aurait des réserves foncières pour ces gens. Parce que moi, je me dis que si on était dans une autre ville qui a les mêmes caractéristiques, dans la planification, l'aménagement du territoire, il faudra impérativement penser à avoir des réserves foncières pour ces gens de catastrophe.
Please thank on behalf of all of us the person for this, Dr. Lum, for this very nice presentation. And now we conclude with, let me see if I can do that. Yes, with Professor Kyoma, Nakamura, Associate Professor at Okpara University of Agriculture in Nigeria. Kyoma, are you online? Hello, Kyoma? know? Ah, so she didn't. Okay, so I think we should start the discussion then.
Questions?
Yes. You want to start, please?
Maybe if there is some reaction or question, and question from the panelists, or if you don't, I have a first question for you, Salem. I understand that you can not go in the detail of the 10 different projects you have, but about citizen science, if you had one good example to share, to present, maybe the one of Dublin, what would be the key facts to highlight? Or yeah.
Right. Well, in terms of citizen science, like within the project, we use citizen science for two main objectives, if you want. So the first one is to develop the co-warning system, right? So we use practically low-cost sensor technologies similar to what you had to be used by the citizens to monitor the local environment, and those sensors will broadcast the data to the platform, and then we use those to feed into the model, and we test different what-if scenarios that will help the decision makers take a decision about the warnings, right? So that's part of the story. The other part is in co-designing the nature-based solutions to be implemented. And for that particular goal, what we use is we use gamification process. So we use Minecraft as a game to actually help design in the nature-based solution. So those are the two main goals, if you want. Now, in the 10 cities, we kind of like use different sensors and different citizen science initiatives. But for example, the one in Dublin and Sligo, what we try to do is we try to enhance the sandy dunes using different types of nature-based solutions, so bio-enhanced sandy dunes. And we designed a gamification process that will help us together with the citizens, to co-design the nature-based solution, the enhancement process. We've done one, and we've implemented one of the nature-based solution. So that's one of the initiatives. The other thing that we also do in Sligo is we use the kite to have aerial photos of the beach in order to get understanding of the coastal erosion. So we have kites equipped with cameras and LiDAR that kind of DIY built by the citizens. We obviously provide loads of technical assistance with that, and then citizens will practically use it, mainly junior citizens, to monitor the coastal line, and we get a continuous feed of data from the coastal lines using those kites. And then our scientists will kind of like analyze the data and then feed into the model to understand how well nature-based solution acting against coastal erosion. So hopefully that gave you an answer.
Yeah, so I have a question for Karim. Yes. So how would you advise the UN decade to do something to deploy, to facilitate the process of knowledge, of sharing of knowledge for adaptation, to climate adaptation?
Yes.
What is your advice?
My advice, with modesty. First of all, I think we need to separate the global north and the global south, because first of all, the question is the equality to have an access of the open data, not qualified data. This is not because the data is free or open data that is not a relevant data. It's very important. After, the question is how we build a new type of governance to manage and to operate the tool after. Because this is not because you are just build and implement the first step of the platform, a knowledge platform, that is enough. The question is for the after, because you need to update the data, you need to update with the new type of scenarios of climate change from the IPCC, for example, but also you need to imagine some non-thinking topics for the futures, impensé. In French, we speak about the impensé. To determine which type of uses you need to use the model, because the uses of the model will impact the type of functionality and some type of new type of data. It doesn't exist in today, for example. So the question is, you need this platform knowledge is the first steps, is a way to start this initiative to accelerate the implementation of digital solution. Not expensive, I repeat, this is not an expensive digital solution, because we know that we could finance this as soon as possible, and we know that this cost is nothing if we compare with the cost of inaction after. First of all, and of course, sometimes we could, this is examples that I just presented before, it could be that the private-public partnership, not for the management of the operation, of the maintenance of the tools, is to design, to co-design, because you use, altogether we use the term of the co-design, co-build, co-manage, Excel co-developed. It's very important, but after, we need to accept that we need to separate this solution for the local communities and for all the local stakeholders. It's very important. But this is not because we implement and we left the tools in the for the local stakeholders that we need to cut the future partnership. This is a way to imagine a new type of partnership, a new type of innovative solution, and sometimes this is what we are doing in Dominica Island. We are creating a new type of new services, public-private services, but also with the NGO services for the all stakeholders. Donc, if we have a very open mind and a large imagination, we know that this first step is rapidly very cheaper solution if we compare with all the possibilities. For me, the engagement is to prove, to show this all business capacity, all the social capacity, and to say that the cost is very, very nothing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Theo, do you have any?
Is there some question from the audience?
Yes. Hi. My name is Michelle Tichelaar. I'm with the Stanford Center for Ocean Solutions. First of all, thank you for sharing your experiences from around the world. It's really inspiring to see all of this action already taking place. It really struck me that some of you started to talk about multiple hazards impacting communities, but the hazards that all of you talked about were firmly in the water realm, so flooding or sea level rise and things like that. And in some of my work, in one pillar, ended up looking at heat extremes and impacts on human health. In other pillars, I've looked at ecosystem impacts on fisheries and aquaculture and what that might mean for nutrition. So clearly, there's all these interlinking ways in which climate impacts communities. And I was curious if you're starting to see a move towards sort of all hazards, all impacts, thinking around climate risk and adaptation, and what you see, I guess, as the main barriers towards getting there. Thank you.
Who want to start?
Well, thank you for the question. So I suppose that's kind of like a great question. Like, I do agree. Well, what we do within SCORE is we develop an integrated solution for multiple hazards. So what we look at is different. What we did is we sat with the communities after establishing the living labs, and we co-defined the problems. So as you would expect, different communities would have different problems. So what we did is kind of like the framework that we're developing is to be used to increase the climate resilience, no matter what is the challenge facing the community. Because what we discovered is you need like a systematic approach to act on a climate change to make a transformative solution. The main challenge, I would say, is, well, within Europe is the language, right? So what we want to do is to make sure that we have a network of cities and communities that learn from each other. So that takes a lot of resources to make sure that we can communicate the lessons learned to every single person within the community. So that's one, I suppose, one challenge. And the other one is the data kind of management and collection. One of the many challenges that we discovered, if you want to act systematically on a climate change to produce a transformative solution, you would need to manage the data coming from all the different sources, because every single part of the data is very important. If you talk about data coming from citizen science, absolutely complicated, because it can come with all different sort of formats. And then you have data coming from satellites, data coming from the models, and then how you can integrate those into each other, how you integrate the models to talk to each other, and then how you can integrate that to the nature, to model different what-if scenarios. So data management is a huge task in actually enabling citizens and communities to act in climate change. So I leave that on to this. So.
I would add that for us, we really let the community drive what sorts of hazards we're looking at. I mentioned the project started as a water level monitoring project, and after meeting with Harambe House for months and years, we heard that the Hudson Hill community, near port, marginalized frontline community, was concerned about air quality. They live next to the third largest port in the United States. There's trucks and trains going in and out constantly, and concerns about air quality. And so we branched out and acquired some air quality sensors and are helping deploy those throughout the community. Had talks with EPA and training with EPA on air quality monitoring. So I think, we really truly let the community drive the conversation on which hazards we're looking at, which solutions we're looking at, and sort of defer to them on what issues and hazards in their minds are biggest concerns for their communities.
If I can ask, Christy, are you still with us? Do you have any comment on the multi-hazard?
I am. I actually have thought a lot over the last few years on this question of multi-hazards. The examples I showed are flooding, but if you think about the climate change impacts of increased changing precipitation, potentially, for example, drought in some areas, but also increased rainfall in others, which can lead to flooding, but also to landslides, to breaches of dams, to other kinds of cascading hazards. The one thing that I have taken away from that is that the integration of the various different kinds of data sets should be done, really must be done, with the curation of the local and regional communities who understand their ecosystems and their cities, the interactions between the infrastructure they have and the local environment far better than those of us who work remotely. I think that incorporating those stakeholders and incorporating that kind of local knowledge. We have a program, I didn't talk about it today, but we have a project in Greenland in which the major aim is one of the major goals is to interact with and make use of that local knowledge. I think it's incredibly important.
Thank you, Christy. Very important. Yes, another question, please. Holger, I guess.
Yeah, Holger Brix, Helmholtz-Zentrum Herion in Germany. I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit on strategies that you have when stakeholders have different interests and you have conflicts of interest from the side of the stakeholders. How do you handle that?
Karim?
Perhaps your question complete the previous answer question, because we speak about the multi-hazard approach. I think we need to separate the data, the type of the data, the source of the data, and in the separate way to analyze which type of architecture system that we need to develop. Because we know when we speak about the diagnosis of vulnerability, the predictive model will depend on your algorithm, for example, and your algorithm will depend about your end users. It's very important to have this interaction and this direct link between the algorithm, your mathematical or physical process, and your final results. And it will depend on the stakeholders, it will depend on users, it will depend on your needs. That's why we need to separate the both, because for the same project, sometimes if you have two different teams, you could have two different models also. The question is to justify where from, you could justify the qualification of your data, if your data is relevant, and after, to answer your question about the opposite interest between all the stakeholders, but each stakeholder could determine a own specific model or specific system or process without to have an impact of the source of the data. Because for me, it's two different things. Look, you could have the same data, the same tools, the same platform with several types of functionality, and each functionality will depend on the demand of the stakeholders. This is my point of view.
Yeah, well, in relation to the stakeholders, well, it's a great question, because like I saw it like several times, like, you know, whenever like you're with a community, like you have multiple stakeholders, you know, small enterprises, businesses, and farmers, you name it, like all the state, and obviously they do have sometimes, like, you know, kind of conflict in you know, because of their interests, right? So one exercise that we started doing, like as we build the body of the living lab, is to map the stakeholders against their power and interests. So the most powerful, the most interest person that you want to make sure that you keep them informed and satisfied, right? And happy as well, because otherwise the whole process will be kind of like collapsing. But as well, because of climate justice and environmental justice, you want to make sure that the less power and interested people are also involved in the process through the co-monitor, co-design process, and that's how you keep them involved in the process. You will always, as you deal with the communities, you will always see, you know, disagreements, and that's part of normal. But what we discovered, that if you put that within the living lab approach as an iterative approach, you know, the same problem will be discussed from different angles, and you will reach a kind of like an agreement at the end of the day, because you are following a process, and that process is iterative. So I hope that answered the question of the stakeholders.
Yeah, this is a very important question, if I might say. And I don't think there is any solution except the iterative, as you are saying. And I would say the discussion, the engagement of the community, but all community. I agree that the very powerful people have to be satisfied, but also the other that require some satisfaction that their view is. So here, I think that discussion tables and you know, forums, we organized several in Italy that were putting together different communities, like the fishermen community, very much in contrast with the touristic community that is very strong in Italy, and with the transport community. They are all fighting for the space. So my question is then, how is maritime spatial planning going to help? Is it helping now, in your opinion, or not? My opinion is not helping yet as a process. Do you think we should modify it and make it more, you know, up to date? And how? Maritime spatial planning. Somebody from the audience?
I suppose the first part of the question is easy. Yes, we need to modify it. Now, how? That's the complicated part, and I suppose it will need to involve the scientific community together with the local governmental bodies, because it cannot come from top down to those local governmental bodies. You'll have to involve community. You'll have to involve municipalities and city councils in the process. So that's, I suppose, a key point.
I would say it is so hard because different groups have conflicting interests constantly. And I think it's important to focus on what interests they have in common and common goals. And sort of an example of that, we in coastal Georgia, certainly I, don't really talk about climate change or sea level rise when I'm talking to decision makers from rural municipalities, rural counties. We talk about flooding. And I know that that flooding is caused by climate change and sea level rise. The person that I'm talking to may not believe in climate change or sea level rise, but has the lived experience that it is flooding more and more often. And so we have that common interest to address the flooding problems, even though we may have conflicting beliefs on what is causing it. And so I think focusing on common interests, common goals is key here and incredibly important to moving forward in these lines of work.
To continue to add, I think it's today we are thinking with the current philosophy, current reference, current policy, etc. We need to accept that we need to rethink in the future with something that doesn't exist today. Because perhaps we know that all the geographical areas are changing with the climate change. The relief, the elevation, the landscape, all are changing very soon, very rapidly. And notably in the coastline, for example. And the question is how we could imagine a new type of governance aligned with a new type of balance of power. Because today, you could say that I'm not vulnerable, but after tomorrow, you will be vulnerable. That's why the tools that we are developing today, all the data, should support and to help the people to make the better decision. But we need to take care about how the result could impact the balance of power between the poor community, the rich community, the public stakeholders and the private stakeholders. It's very important because we know that the capacity to illustrate or to keep or to manage the results could become a new type of power, I think, notably in the vulnerable territories, notably in coastal and the small island countries.
Is there a very last question? So I think we can thanks our panelists. Thank you very much for your participation, your question, and we will leave the floor to the next panel discussion on new methods and approach for coastal adaptation science. So thank you very much.